The Siege of Orléans occurred during the Hundred Years' War, a contest between the ruling houses of France and England for supremacy over France. After a series of undisputed victories, the English and their Burgundian allies controlled northern France, including Paris and the southwest coast. Orléans was the northernmost city that remained loyal to the French crown. Its position on the Loire River made it the last obstacle to a campaign into central France. After several attacks on the city without great results, the English army decided to surround the city and starve it into submission. Orléans was a city of about 5,000 inhabitants located on the north bank of the Loire River. In their advance towards the center of France, the English army under the command of the Earl of Salisbury arrived near the city and decided to assault it. After a series of hard confrontations, the English took control of several fortresses that surrounded the city and the Tourelles bastion, which gave access to the city through the bridge that crossed the river. The French, to avoid being attacked by the bridge, decided to blow up some of their bows. Shortly after, Jean de Dunois arrived with 600 men and took charge of the defense of the city. During this period the Earl of Salisbury was wounded and died soon after. William de la Pole was chosen as the English commander and decided to build a series of outer works and wait for the city supplies to run out and surrender. However, the figure of Joan of Arc entered the scene, who convinced the French King Charles VII that she was sent by God and that if he gave her an army she would free Orléans from the siege. Joan arrived on the south bank of the Loire with supplies for the city in several hundred soldiers, ahead of the rest of the army. She was determined to attack the Tourelles directly but was convinced by the other French commanders that the most important thing was to resupply Orléans first. A fleet of ships sailed from the city to transport supplies and reinforcements. A diversionary French attack on the Bastille of Saint-Lô enabled the ships to reach Orléans without trouble. After distributing the supplies, Jean Dunois decided to bring the rest of the army sent by Charles VII that was slowly approaching the city. Once in the city, the French decided to attack Saint-Lô, which was defended by 400 men. The French outnumbered the English and the Bastille was destroyed. At a council of war, the French commanders decided to attack the south bank of the river, where the English were weakest. Most of the defenders were embarked, including urban militias. The landing took place near the fort of Saint-Jean-le-Blanc, whose English garrison decided to destroy it and defend Les Tourelles against the approach of the French army. Joan launched a hasty attack on the boulevard, the front of the Tourelles, defended by 800 men. The French forces were compromised by the arrival of English reinforcements from another castle to the west and the attack by the garrison of the convent of St. Augustine's, south of the boulevard. The situation was not favorable for the French, but Joan of Arc managed to encourage the troops and, following the advice of the other commanders, they redirected the attack against the convent, which was conquered. After building some siege weapons, the French army launched an attack on the boulevard. Meanwhile, in the city, the bridge over the Loire was repaired and the French cannons and troops were able to advance to attack the Tourelles from the north. Finally, the English garrison was defeated and the fortification taken. Losing control of the south bank of the river, William de la Pole, the English commander, realized that the city was no longer isolated and could receive reinforcements and supplies. He lifted the siege by destroying all the fortifications he had used and left the area. The Siege of Orléans marked a turning point in the Hundred Years' War between France and England. The city had strategic and symbolic significance for both sides of the conflict, and the siege represented the first major victory for France since the defeat at Agincourt in 1415. The battle reinforced the low morale of the French. Many volunteers joined the army because they wanted to fight under Joan of Arc's banner, and in just 2 months, the French army regained control of the Loire River, turning the tide of the war.